To go. Good morning. Welcome to the Career Fuel podcast. This is our first live coaching episode, and I have no idea how it's going to go. And I'm hoping that, as the next 45 minutes to an hour rolls out, that we have lots of you coming to ask questions, to give us feedback or thoughts in terms of what's happening in your career search. And we're going to answer the questions on the fly. And so we decided to do this probably about a month ago. We had been having some conversations around questions that people had been sending to us through the Warrington group, through our website, and just basically asking questions that, we felt there were some running themes around, how do I get noticed? How do I leverage LinkedIn? What does the platform look like? How can I, land that interview? How do I answer some of these interview questions? And as we were just rolling through the conversations, we thought it might be a great opportunity to, kind of technically take the show on the road and have conversation with you as you're thinking through it. So it is Friday, May the 30th. It is raining here in Halifax, as typically has been happening over the weekends. And I'm going to hang out here for 45 minutes or so, and we're going to chat through it. And again, so bring questions that are related to either your resume or your cover letter or LinkedIn itself. If you are, getting ready to interview and you're not sure about those dreaded interview questions that you're going to receive, or if you're just really curious about what organizations are looking for or how you make that career pivot, like this is your opportunity to jump in with us and ask those questions, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. We're going to give it a go. It's been a really great opportunity to stretch ourselves outside of our comfort zones, right? Like usually we're doing this in a studio. I'm always in this studio. I'm just like tying this around my neck here. I'm always in this studio, at the Podstarter Studios when we record our episodes. But if I make a mistake, I can stop. If I'm not sure about something, or we're looking for some other information or context, we've got the opportunity to bleep things out or cut things or reorganize them. And today we do not. So today it is flying by the seat of our pants. So I absolutely love that the Podstarter family is so open to everything that I want to try, week over week when we're doing this. And so if you listened to any of the recent episodes, we've had the Podstarter team help, navigate some interview style format. They're really creative in terms of giving us ideas and things that we can talk about. And so hopefully, again, you guys have driven from some of that and you'll ask some questions. Nothing. It's quiet on a Friday morning.
Our first question from LinkedIn user is, how do you know when the right time is to move on from a role?
How do you know when the right time is to move on from a role? Well, I think if you're asking the question, that's probably the first step to go, something isn't feeling great. And I think, outside of, that feeling of, hey, is it potentially time for me to look at something different? I think it is, if you're not feeling fulfilled in the work that you're doing, if you don't feel like you have an opportunity to grow and develop. I know that we don't always look at something from a growth perspective, but if you're feeling like stale or stagnant, or you can identify that it is a toxic environment, and that you're not happy in, that is usually the time to start exploring that. I think, quite honestly, if you're asking the question, you're already there. But if you need, a few other things to help you make that make sense, it's, are you feeling fulfilled in your work? Do you dread Mondays, right? Do you can't wait to get to Friday, whether it's pouring rain like it is here in Halifax or not? And, do you like the work that you do? And again, nobody grew up wanting to have a job. We all want to be either like rich or famous and traveling the world and doing all these things. That's unfortunately the reality for the majority of us, is that that's not going to happen. But you want to be doing something that you like and something that you can get excited about. And if you're not excited about it, then that's the time that we want to be able to, ask the question of, what do we do next?
Got another question for you. What advice would you give to someone who just downloaded the LinkedIn app?
Ooh. What advice would I give to someone who just started on LinkedIn? Well, I would say go slow, right? Like, again, depending on who you're connected with and what that looks like, you're going to think that you've got to do all of the same things they are doing, and you do not. I think what I would say is, if you're just new to LinkedIn, then take your time with it, build your connections, build authentically. Like, don't go and, start messaging people and asking for coffee meetings and can they get you an interview and all of those different things. I would set up the profile. I would have a headshot. I would make sure that I had a cover photo and not just the generic background that they give you on LinkedIn. I would create a really strong headline to demonstrate who am I, and in the space that I am in from that perspective. But then I would really just engage actively on the platform and build my network day over day.
Okay, next question is, what are some don't do's when negotiating a salary increase?
What are some do not do's when in negotiating a salary increase? Well, ooh, I'm gonna use my sales experience from way back when is I think, the one thing I don't want you to do is think that you shouldn't ask for the salary increase, right? Like if you are everyone wants to make more money. That's just the nature of the world that we live in. But what I would say is when you're going to actually negotiate your salary, whether it's because you're taking on a new position or maybe you're promoting internally or it's annual review time, I want you to have the business case with you in terms of the work that you've done that warrants you, achieving that salary increase. But what I don't want you to do is feel like you don't deserve it. And I don't want you to feel like you ask for it and then you try to pull it back, right? So in sales, one of the things that they say to us is if you're like, moving forward and you're putting something on the table, you have to stand behind that and wait for the other person to respond versus if it's quiet and it's uncomfortable and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, then you kind of start to backpedal. So be confident in it. Don't go in there thinking that you don't deserve it, but have something to back up why you deserve that so you can put that in front of your employer, whether you're negotiating something new or it's internal to the organization you are part of.
What are some don't do's when negotiate? Oh, we just
You
answered
did
that.
that one, silly.
Okay. We got lots of questions coming in. Though.
Okay,
Like,
amazing.
Trying to know where to start.
Yeah.
So somebody says, I'm a 19-year-old university student trying to find summer work. I've sent hundreds of resumes and can't find anything. What do I do?
So, okay. So I would say, regardless if you're going back to school in the fall or if you are, finished for a time being and you're looking at working, it's going to be some networking, but it's also going to be really demonstrating what transferable skills you have on your resume versus the experience you have. Because at 19, you probably don't have a lot. Even if you've worked since you were 15, that's only 4 years of work experience. So I want you to think more about the skills that you have: communication, problem solving, customer service, adaptability, being able to, work in busy environments, especially if it's hospitality or retail, and take the skills that you would have gained in those roles and lead with that versus the actual experience that you have.
Yeah.
The next one is from Laura Anthony. Just joining the job search after being employed for 30 years. Do you see that length of experience working for me or against me?
Laura, 30 years. That's fantastic. I think there's two schools of thought on it. I personally don't think it works against you 100%. What I would like to see is that I would like you to, think about what you've done in those 30 years that you still want to be doing and focus on that versus the whole wide range of the 30 years of experience. I think what happens is when we have so much experience, we feel like we have to jam all of it into our resume and put it forward. And I think what I want you to do is take some inventory of what have I done over the 30 years and then most recently that I still am enjoying doing and I would like to focus on and then lead with that because you'd have a tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise that will be very beneficial to an organization. But I don't want you leading with all 30. I want you to really figure out what is it that I like to do and would like to continue doing, whether it's for another 3, 5, or 10 years.
Yeah. What's one thing someone who feels trapped in a role can do as a positive first step?
If you feel trapped in a role, of positive first step. I would say that the first step is, and again, if you've listened to any of these episodes, you probably know it's coming. And it's two things. It's one, get quiet, sit in the quiet and think about what's making you feel trapped. Is it the work that you're doing or is it the company that you're with, right? Because it might be that you love the work that you're doing, but you don't love the environment you're in, right? So you need to know what's making you feel trapped. And the only way that you can, determine what that is to sit in the quiet, like I say all of the time, because what the answer is there. And again, who you are and where you want to be and who you want to be around and the type of work you want to do, it's going to come to the surface if you sit in the quiet. So that would be the first thing. And then the second thing for me would be if you're feeling trapped and you're not sure what that next step is, go through the quiet steps, but also start to use LinkedIn to your advantage and start researching companies, industries, organizations, people that you can connect with, that you can start to step outside that that trapped box that you're in and explore what other potential opportunities are out there. Because once you see possibility, then it'll allow you to pull in a direction that really feels exciting to you. And when you get that excitement and you get those butterflies, and we all have them in different areas of your life, but when you start to feel the butterflies again, it will take you towards the direction that you want to go.
And I can't get motivated to find a new job until I quit my current job. What's your opinion on this?
Well, so it's less of opinion and more of like motherly advice, right? So I mean, if you're in a position financially that you can quit your job, have at it. A lot of people are not. We don't see gaps on resumes the way that we used to before as a detriment, right? The world of the post pandemic or during the pandemic, a lot of people had gaps that they wouldn't have normally had. So I just wouldn't quit my job without a plan. And if I didn't have the financial backing to support myself, meaning like, do you have savings or do you have another income that you can rely on? So for me, when I worked at Manulife, as most people know, and if you're on LinkedIn, you can see it on my profile, I was there for almost 10 years and I wanted to go on my own and I wanted to do something different, but I couldn't at that time take the leap and take the risk to go on my own because income was a factor, right? And I couldn't give up my salary at that time to try something that I didn't know if it was going to work or not. So I couldn't take that jump. But once I was packaged out and I had a severance plan that I could, go behind the scenes, I can continue to work through what it is that I want to do. I had that income there for me. So I wouldn't jump and go, you can find another job without having to quit the one that you're in. And you can discreetly leverage LinkedIn to your benefit. From that perspective. So I don't want it to be, I can't find the other one because now that's a mindset thing. But I also don't want, I don't want you to quit your job if you then don't know how you're going to support yourself or feed yourself, because that's just going to add a level of stress that will actually slow down your career search.
We have a LinkedIn user saying, I have a friend who's a stellar PM, project manager, I'm assuming, and is paid really well at a nonprofit. She's having a really hard time finding work that pays a similar salary, but is miserable at her job. Should she take a pay cut to be happy, or will it take too long to build back up to similar salary considering she's single and pays bills alone?
Well, I mean, we're always going to have to weigh salary, into it because that's how we eat, that's how we live. We have the bills and all of those things. I don't know how big of a pay cut you potentially have to take. So that, I mean, are we talking cutting it in half? That's probably going to take some time to climb back up. But at the same time, I think if she is looking and she is confident in her skills and what she brings to the table, like where does she add value? How does she create impact? What are those next steps for her and what sets her apart from other candidates? The pay cut may not be as big. It's really hard to know that 100% obviously without seeing the full picture. If it's cutting your pay in half, yeah, that's a pretty big jump, and it's probably going to take some time to come back up there. If you have the ability to spend the time with yourself and get really clear on where do I add value? How do I create impact? What are the skills and experience that I can bring to the table? Most often you can negotiate a salary that if it is lower, it's not significantly lower. It's just, again, you can't just go into something and say, I was making this and here's my experience and give me the same. You really have to look at it from a perspective of why should someone give that to you and be able to articulate it confidently and hopefully not have to take too big of a jump. I wouldn't recommend, unless it's obviously like dire straits and you need to, but I wouldn't recommend taking anything less than a $10,000 pay cut because of the fact that you're at a certain level. We don't want to go back. We always want to be moving forward. The slight step back is okay, but I don't want you going all the way back where you feel like you're completely starting over again. Because again, when you're in a space where you're like then scarcity and worried about money, you're not going to put your best foot forward in the role that you're in, and it's going to feel like it takes longer.
And how long should it take to find a new job in the current job market?
Well, that's industry dependent for sure. I mean, there's some industries that are hiring like absolutely crazy and, the market is irrelevant. And then there's really niche specific positions and industries that it's a bit of a slower process. I would say on average, when you are clear on what you want and you have a solid resume behind you and you know how you're, leveraging LinkedIn to your advantage and all of those things, it should honestly take you like 90 days or less, right? Again, certain level of senior level positions, it can be a longer cycle for those roles because there's more steps required in the hiring process. But for those of us that are, either entry level, early stages of our career, making a bit of a pivot or mid level and above, we're seeing that you can really make a huge impact in 90 days or less. right? But you just have to have a plan. You can't just throw spaghetti at the wall and hope for the best. Like, it doesn't work.
How do you explain a 2-year employment gap on your resume?
I think it's just being honest, right? So I've seen people who send in resumes and they'll say, like, 2020 to 2022 sabbatical, or, looking after a sick parent, or, was on maternity leave, stay at home mom, or whatever that is. I think it's just being transparent. I think what you need to do is, I wouldn't give a whole ton of information, but I would say this is the 2-year window, right? And this was the reason why. I would address it in my cover letter. And then obviously, if you have an opportunity to go into an interview, to say that. If it was, I wasn't employed for 2 years because I just didn't want to know what I wanted to do, and I'd start somewhere and finish and start somewhere and finish and really not get through a week or a month or whatever, that's going to be a reflection. But I think the benefit to the world, as crazy as it is right now, is the fact that people are going to have gaps and employers understand that. But the transparency and the honesty is really important, because there are organizations that will do a background check when they're hiring you, and they will do, check references, but they will also check previous employment. So they're verifying, was your job title what you said it was? Were you there for, the dates that you say you were? And are you eligible for rehire, right? So you want to make sure that, people can find out anything now in the world that we live in, but you want to make sure that if someone is actually doing a background check and confirming previous employment, that they know why, and you've disclosed that up front. It's an integrity piece for sure.
Yeah. And what advice do you have for someone who was recently laid off?
Breathe. Give yourself kindness and grace. It's happening more than we realize. It's happening every day. You are not alone. You feel very alone. Again, I'm sitting here 5 years post layoff or restructure. And if I take myself back to that day, I lost my confidence. I don't even know how much I had at that point, but I definitely lost confidence. I felt blindsided. I felt like kicked in the stomach. I was like, what the hell? Like, I don't understand this, right? And it's really hard in that moment to not take it personal. And, you're emotionally attached to your job, the people you work with, sometimes the organization, all of those things. So it's very hard to not take it personal. So take it personal for a hot minute, but don't sit with it, and know that it's not personal. It is a business decision. But I would say, so, give yourself kindness and grace. Don't wallow in it for too long, right? So it's like, don't lay on the couch for 6 months and be like, I can't believe that this happened to me. Just really take a pause, reset, recharge, and whatever recharge is for you, do that. And then think about, what do I want to do next? If you've gone through a layoff, hopefully you have some type of severance. If you don't, obviously your window of time is probably going to be a little bit shorter to find the next thing. But what I would say is, make sure that you know where you add value and how you create impact through your experience and your skills, and get to networking. Leverage LinkedIn. If you don't want to go to events right now because you're not feeling it, because the confidence is low, that's what LinkedIn is for. It gives you the opportunity to have a bigger reach. And you can, again, do it behind the scenes over and above that. So just be kind to yourself, because those first few days are really, really hard.
Tara Artibani says, I don't think this, oh, it is a question eventually. I love the idea of sit in the quiet for a lot of situations. It hits a lot differently for a job seeker who can't seem to break through the ATS, and hundreds of applicants are all vying for the same role. There's a lot of quiet there. What's your advice to get your resume noticed and land the interview?
Well, I love this. So first part I would say is, yeah, sitting in the quiet, it applies to so many other areas, right? I will also say, like, I miss the quiet right now, right? Like, sometimes I'll sit in the quiet and I'm, trying to figure out things I want to do in the business, or how to support my team, or how do we help a client, or whatever that is. But even like personally, I miss the quiet at times, because some of the greatest things for me personally and professionally come from that quiet. So I think, yeah, absolutely. Like, lean into that and embrace it. It's uncomfortable. If you're not used to doing it, it's going to feel really uncomfortable. You want to grab for your phone, or you're going to want to talk to a friend, or you're going to want to scroll, or whatever that is. But, to get your resume noticed, I think the reason why so many people feel like hundreds and hundreds of people are applying, because they are, and then you're going, well, no one's reaching out to me, no one's reaching out to me. And then I go back to 95% of the resumes that I see, and my team sees, and other recruiters see, and hiring managers and organizations, they all look the same. So they're cookie cutter. You're not standing out. And so that's where the quiet comes in, is sit in the quiet, figure out who you are, right? Whether it's personally or professionally, obviously when we go to your resume, we want the professional piece, but you do have to know your own values and what's important to you personally to tie that into professional. And then when you figure out, okay, it like for me for recruitment, right? I love talking to businesses and saying, okay, how do we figure this out? How do we find you the right people? What's their culture like? How do we, create a positive candidate experience? How do we make sure you as a firm love the experience that we're providing to you? The parts that I don't like are when I have to go into the ATS and I've got to search for hundreds and hundreds of people and I can't find them because they all look the same. So like lean into where your strengths are because everyone's going to have something about their current role that they don't love. Find the thing that you do love and then make sure that in your profile section of your resume that you lean into that and really share that because again, to stand out, you can't look like everyone else, right? Like think about if there was 1,000 people in the same room and we all had the same outfit on, you're not going to find the person you're looking for. But then if the person that you're looking for is like, well, I'm wearing a red hat, you're going to easily spot the person wearing the red hat. So use your profile section as a way to be like, that's the red hat and make sure you stand out. We as recruiters are looking for that. So contrary to popular belief that we don't want to hire you and we already have somebody in mind, that's not true. We just can't find you.
Aw.
I got super amped up about that one.
What would you say is an industry that is hiring a ton right now?
Ooh. Okay. So from an industry perspective, I don't know that I'm going to answer it from an industry's perspective because I think there's lots happening right now in industries that are even like newly developed. But what I would say is that roles that we are seeing that can, go across multiple industries are sales, customer service, project management. We're seeing a lot in the trade space. We see a lot in construction. We see a lot in clean tech and biotech. I'm actually seeing a ton in agriscience inside of that. And then obviously healthcare. I mean, depending on where you are in the world, and I think most places, our healthcare is not great. And, to have the ability, if that is something that is important to you, I'm seeing a lot of programs that are coming out, even specifically in Nova Scotia, where, the government is paying for you to take these career paths. One thing I think that is being, really overlooked for a lot of individuals is the trade sector and again the healthcare sector. But then I think services as a whole inside of that. Every organization is going to need someone to service their customers. Everyone in any industry is going to need someone to sell to their customers, and people are going to need individuals who can move projects forward regardless of the industry. So I think those are the hot ones right now. I would also say legal is huge. And that's not just, okay, well, you need to be a lawyer. If you want to be, that's amazing. And what an accomplishment. At the same time, paralegals are huge. Legal researchers are huge. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that comes across our desk quite often, but it's like there's a lot of movement right now. I know it doesn't feel like there is. And I know people are like, well, I'm being laid off and, this is changing and, the government is, making it not easy and all of those things. I can't really speak to that. Like we always look at it from a growth mindset perspective and how do we pivot? So if one industry is starting to slow down, how do we take it into another direction? Because we've all got the transferable skills that can get us there.
What are your thoughts on using AI in your job search?
I love this. This is Kate from my team because she always is asking me about it. So because her picture came up, I'm going to say it's Kate on the team. Lean into it. Don't rely on it. We've talked about it a lot. If regardless of who's using it, if it sounds like you or not, and if it sounds cookie cutter. One of the things that we're seeing we will literally see someone who sends us a resume, and at the top of it, it says, "Here is your resume generated through ChatGPT for the following job position," and they send it to us. Like, don't do that. It is lean into it. Use it to your advantage. Help it to do research. Help it to, a lot of us get stuck when we need to talk about ourselves or we need to try to find the way to put something together from a wording perspective. So I'm about lean into it. I'm not about relying on it. I can tell when something is written with AI. Whether it's a resume, I can always tell, right? And if you think about it, if you lean so hard into it that you're relying on it, what happens when you get into an interview? You're not gonna be able to answer the questions, right? So that's my philosophy with it is lean into it, don't rely on it. And again, use it to your advantage where you can, but know that it's still the human part of us is not going away.
I'm hearing a lot about fractional work. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Kim. Yeah, fractional work, there is a lot of it. A lot of organizations are looking at, we might not need someone all of the time, but we do need that skill and expertise that can become really important. If you have any level of expertise in your area and you're open to fractional, it can be extremely lucrative. I think there's a lot of value in a fractional role because, like, I think of us as a scaling and growing company. I may not need a CFO at this time. I mean, we're going to get there, but to have that fractional resource support and expertise and almost a mentorship and guidance, I think is really important. So if you have expertise in your field and fractional is an option for you, then I think it can be extremely lucrative. It can be extremely rewarding. And it also allows you the opportunity to, work with individuals and different companies and really learn different approaches, which I think can be really fascinating as a go forward in your career. I love that these are popping up.
What advice do you have for new grads breaking into the job scene?
Advice that I have for new grads is, again, you're going to have to be a little bit patient because people aren't going to see like the experience behind you, right? They're going to see the education, and so they see the technical piece, but they don't necessarily see the doing piece. So I think it's going to be really important for grads to get out from behind their phone and get out from behind their textbooks, and they're going to need to network 100%. But what I really want new grads to do when we're thinking about that is think about it, whatever your education is, what areas did you really enjoy the most when you were going through your education, and start to lean into some of those. And again, think about skills that are important right now. And again, it's communication and problem solving and trying to figure out how do you network so that you can, again, build your communication skills. But again, starting to put yourself in situations where maybe you're going to be asked some of that. It can feel like, okay, I committed all this time and I've got this education and now what do I do with it? And no one's hire me right on the spot, and they're not going to unless you've got something lined up right out of school. It's going to be a bit of a grind, and it's going to take that. You're going to have to network. You're going to have to use LinkedIn. And you're going to have to be uncomfortable with, the quiet and the uncertainty that comes with it because it does take a little bit of time. But you are fresh, you are eager, you're ready to learn, you have a willingness to adapt. And again, the younger generation is less rigid than those of us that are older. And so use that to your advantage. Just like someone who is further in their career has, years and years of work experience, use that to their advantage as well. So just use that scrappiness that comes from your generation and get out there and don't be afraid. Don't be shy.
What advice do you have for someone who feels completely invisible at work but wants to be considered for a promotion?
You got to step out from behind the curtain, right? Like you've got to start to find a way. And if you're uncomfortable doing that, which can be really hard, right? You need to take baby steps and you need to figure out, how can I take it a little bit of a step forward? Is there someone that you can find in your company that you can be mentored by? Is there someone in your company that maybe can't mentor you, but you can have a virtual coffee or an in-person coffee just to learn more about what they're doing so they also can learn about you? And again, top of mind becomes really important. I think a lot of us feel like we're invisible when really we're not. And we don't feel like we're being seen, but others are potentially recognizing. And I think that a lot of us sometimes think, well, someone should be coming looking for me, and no one's coming to look for you. You need to go and look for yourself. So you need to take those steps. I think one thing that I learned when I was packaged out from my role was, once you take the first step, the universe will follow. Now, the universe isn't going to show up and roll out red carpet, but when you start to take the action, which is the hardest part of absolutely anything, is taking the action. But once you start to take that, things will line up. So if you feel invisible at work, but there's someone in a different department, or maybe it's the person that you report to, that you can reach out to and say, you know what, I want to explore other opportunities or my professional development in the organization. Are you able to give me 15 minutes of your time so I can learn more about, or ask you questions or get advice from you? Like, you have to take the first step. No one is coming to open that door and say, you're no longer invisible, here you go. Like, you have to take that first step.
Lindsay Reed asks, Madison Irvin, as a follow-up to your question, what are some creative ways to network if I don't have many industry contacts?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn. You research, you find, you can go and you can get in groups on LinkedIn. You can find people that you went to school with, whether that's high school or university or post grad or what have you. You can think about the industry that you're in and you can start to research inside of that and start making connections. People, when I've been on LinkedIn forever, well, not forever, but like since 2007. So I've been building that for a very long time. When I had new team members join, their LinkedIn presence wasn't as huge. It doesn't take long to build it. Then you can have connections that you might not really know who they are, and you don't have to get into huge conversations, but build the network because over time we talk about that spider web effect before, right? Like you never know when you're going to come across somebody. And so if you don't have a lot, again, it's just starting. Make a commitment to connect with 10 people a week if you don't want to do it a day. You just have to start there.
What are some core skills you can highlight on your resume from being a small entrepreneur that you can use to your advantage when you get back into the job market?
Yeah, I love this. What I would say is an entrepreneur of any level, the skills are massive because you have to wear a ton of different hats in a ton of different ways. Like 5 years ago, I knew nothing about accounting, and by no means do I know a ton now, but I know more than I did 5 years ago because of the hats that I've had to wear. So if you are a small business owner, or you're an entrepreneur, or you are a consultant, or you're a freelancer, or any of the things where you are responsible for driving your own income and you are not an employee at an organization, and you want to now move back into corporate, you have a ton of skills that you need to highlight on your resume. And those are going to be the transferable skills, right? Like it's probably time management, organizational skills, communication skills, problem solving, adaptability, right? Like thinking of those things. So think of the things that you did as that entrepreneur or that business owner or consultant or freelancer or whatever it was, and think about how did you go from point A to point B with whatever the work is that you were doing, and what were the steps that you took. I can guarantee those 5 things that I just said, you have them. You might be like, well, I wasn't really great at time management, or I wasn't really good at, maybe, project delivery, but there's something inside of those pieces. And again, that's where sitting with the quiet and really going, okay, where do I add value and how do I create impact? And then start to pull those through. And then for an entrepreneur, business owner, you need to put those transferable skills in the headline of your LinkedIn profile and in your about section. And then you need to put them in the profile section of your resume.
What's one thing you learned the hard way in your own career?
What's one thing I learned the hard way? I don't know. We've had a tough week at the Warrington Group, I'm not going to lie, in a couple of areas. But I would say one area that I have learned the hard way is that you can have the best of intentions to drive something forward, and it doesn't always mean it's going to be successful. We collectively as a team have been successful in a lot of areas, and we win a lot of the time, which is really exciting. So when we don't have a win, it's hard. Again, it's hard to not take it personal. It's hard to not feel like the bottom is falling out. But what I would say that I've learned the hard way is sometimes I just have to go, we did our best. We tried our hardest. We did what we could to make it right, and be able to move forward in a positive direction in terms of what did we learn from that. And I think, again, because, we've had a few bumps in the road this week. I mean, many of you might know from LinkedIn that we had a job fair and we'd had like 4 people show up, and it was just like crushing to me and the team. Because again, we do our best to over deliver all of the time. Like we're in it to show up that way. And so for me, it was, don't take it personal, figure out how to move forward for it, and then how to support the team. And it's really hard to support your team and lift them up when you're feeling like you failed at something or you didn't do well at something. And so for me, it's, I'm learning the hard way to not take things personal, because in business, it isn't personal, even though, because you can't control it, right? So to just let go of control sometimes is really, really hard.
Nisa Eberly says, hi, is this being recorded? I would love to rewatch and send to others that are in my circle who are looking. P.S. I would recommend also to meetups to network and find communities that do what you do. Great convo.
Amazing. So yes, this is being recorded. I don't know the particulars from the behind the scenes on the podcast face and the chatter, but the girls that are producing are giving me thumbs up right now to say it will be recorded. It will also be a podcast episode, right, ladies, where you can go to, Apple, Spotify, wherever, and download the episode. So yes, absolutely. I don't know a lot about meetups, but I have heard about them. So, if you're listening and you're curious about networking, follow Nisa's advice for sure. mentor, wherever you can get out and be out, or wherever you can find groups that you can interact with virtually, those are always great steps. My default will always be LinkedIn because I built my career and now part of the foundation of the business through the connections I have on the platform. But I also go to a lot of events, more so now than I ever did before. I have more of a social life now than I did probably for the last 20 years. But anyway, I digress on that. But wherever you can put yourself in a situation where you can talk to other people and just learn from other people, that's how you can, build your contact and your network from there.
What do you say to someone who's good at a lot of things but just doesn't know what direction to go in?
Okay, so this is Lindsay on my team, and I love Lindsay. And I'm going to tell Lindsay's story right now. So Lindsay came to me in 2021. She had been following me on Instagram. And at that time, I did one-on-one sessions, just like 15, 20-minute like sessions that were complimentary to chat through people that had questions. And Lindsay and I got talking, and Lindsay's background was very diverse. So she worked in hospitality. She was an assistant manager at like a really fancy restaurant. She had a background in music education and like all of these really cool things that she did. And she's like, I don't know what to do. I've moved rurally, so I'm not in the city anymore. I obviously am not going to be, doing the commute for that job anymore, and I don't know what I want to do. And she had so many skills that made it feel confusing, right? And so through that conversation, which the goal at that initial conversation was not that Lindsay was going to join the team and be here 4 years later, but it was to start to help her see that she had a lot of skills, but just because you have a lot of skills doesn't mean that you want to use those skills or you want to use that experience. She knew she didn't want to be in hospitality anymore, but at the same time, hospitality is such a phenomenal foundation to have because you're dealing with, different people all the time. There is a level of service that has to be delivered. It's usually a very fast-paced environment and you've got to be able to adapt and change on the fly. Excuse me. So we were looking at Lindsay's skills from that perspective of, what's important to you? Do you like dealing with people? Do you like making sure things are moving forward in a fast direction and, a positive outcome? And so you have to take inventory of those skills and think about what's important to you. And again, the intention through that call was not to hire Lindsay, but later that night, my husband was like, Jen, like you're too busy. You've got so much on the go. Like you can't be working the amount that I think you need to hire someone. And I'm not someone who sometimes takes advice very well, but we had a conversation and then I was like, you know what? I talked to this girl today. I think she'd be fantastic. I don't know if she would want it, but I think she would be really good. I don't have a job description. I don't have any idea what that would look like. And again, because Lindsay is adaptable and she has strong communication skills and even some problem solving skills. At that time, we went back and forth over email over the weekend. And then like 2 weeks later, she started. So I think, to the question she's asking, which I totally appreciate because that was a road she walked, is think about the skills that you have that you like using, right? Like I can do some of my accounting stuff, but I don't love doing it. So I'm not going to like lean into something that has an accounting component to it. So think about those things and figure out what are the top 3 things you like and move forward with those first and then explore after that. Do we have more?
Yes.
Okay.
What would you say to someone who feels they're too old to pivot?
I'm not allowed to swear on LinkedIn, am I? You're never too old. Listen, my birthday is, I think it's 6 weeks from today, 7 weeks from today. I'm going to be 50 and you can pivot as much as you want. I actually saw something on LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, on Instagram. And they were saying that, most entrepreneurs don't start their business till they're in their 40s. And yes, there's someone in my EO group, Jamie, who owns Black Harbor Distillery, and she couldn't even start her business when she first wanted to because she was only 18 and you had to be 19 to have a business that was alcohol based. So yeah, people are starting businesses younger and younger, but people are also starting businesses older and older. So they say that most entrepreneurs don't actually start until they're in their 40s. They're also seeing a lot of information where women specifically are not starting businesses until they're in their 50s. I was 45. Like I got packaged out in March. I turned 45 in July. So if anyone's wondering, July 11th is my 50th. It's a big milestone. So that's the only holiday I care about is people's birthdays. I don't care about the other ones. But you're never too old. I also follow a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk, and he is like, listen, if you're 40 or you're 50 or even if you're 60, you could still have 30 really good years left. Like go chase that. Like don't slow yourself down because of age. Age is just a number. I think, there are organizations that ageism is a factor, 100%. That being said, I think they're gonna have to be the ones that pivot because there is so much value. People are working longer either because they want to, because they love what they do, or because they need to. So don't discount any of that. You can pivot any time you want in any direction you want to. You just have to believe that you can.
Janetta
Janetta.
Smith is asking, what type of resources would you recommend for someone in their job search who's feeling deflated and doesn't know why they're not getting callbacks?
I would say, from a perspective of resources, I would say that you need to have our LinkedIn tip sheet because I think if you're leveraging LinkedIn, you're not going to feel as deflated. And again, I want to like totally preface that like I'm not like a LinkedIn ambassador and LinkedIn doesn't pay me to say all this stuff, but I love the platform and it's just so valuable. So I think the first thing would be our LinkedIn tip sheet, which we always link in the show notes and you can find it on our website. I think the other thing when you're feeling deflated is the resource is you, right? Like you have to be able to sit with yourself and go, I am hireable because I've got people that come to me and say I'm not hireable or I'm unqualified or all this other stuff that is just BS that we're telling ourselves. You have to sit in the quiet and you need to be able to identify what is important to you. What are your values? What skills do you have? I know that I can sit with someone and say, like, tell me about your career and the skills that, you have helped you to get to where you are. And people can just kind of sit and feel like, I don't know how to answer that. Well, if you sit in the quiet long enough, you can articulate what those skills are and then be confident in them. And again, we don't feel confident when we're looking for a job or we're stressed out or we've been packaged out. I get all of that, but it is a muscle you have to flex and it is something you have to practice because nobody else is confident doing it, right? So it's another way to stand out. So I think the resource is you. And then when you're looking outside of yourself, you need to look at who is someone that you trust in terms of the advice that they're giving or the resources that they're providing. And then I would really lean into, leveraging those resources. We have a ton. The podcast is one. The information we put out on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn tip sheet. We have a resume template. We have free workshops, right? Like our next workshop is June the 18th on like how to find your next job in 90 days or less. Like we're giving all of these resources to you. All of those resources are free. So take advantage of them. And if it's not me and it's someone else you're better aligned to, that's okay as well. But leverage the resource because once you see yourself in something me or someone else is saying, and you can hold on to that, the confidence starts to come, the steps start to be taken, the momentum starts to build, and then you get to the other side of that and you don't have to feel deflated.
Emily says, how do you break into different sectors? As project managers, we have so many transferable skills, but can't seem to convince other hiring managers of our value across sectors.
I love this question, Emily. Can you actually put that back up? Because there's two parts to it, and I just want to make sure that I answer it properly. So breaking into different sectors is going to come down to two things initially. It's going to come down to networking and finding people in the sectors that you want to be in that, again, have some commonalities or you can build those authentic relationships with. But I also think it's going to be the transferable skills that you have because you've identified, again, project managers have so many transferable skills, like they're insane. So to be able to go, what are the transferable skills that I have and how do I want to promote them so that people will give me that opportunity? That is your resume, that is your LinkedIn, that is being able to network and start those conversations. Project managers are extremely versatile, right? So it's like, delivering on time and within budget, and it's, taking a scope of, various size of projects and moving them forward. It's communication, it's problem solving, it's being solutions focused and adaptable. Those are such valuable skills. And so pick the three that are most in demand. So two of them are communication and problem solving, and then find something else specific to that industry. That's where you can lean into ChatGPT and AI. Like what are, if you decide what industry you want to go into, what are transferable skills that I can leverage for that particular industry in 2025, and then start to highlight that and have examples behind you so that when you're networking and building those relationships, you've got stuff that you can talk about because we go back to add value, create impact.
And what's one thing you wish more young professionals would focus on?
Oh my God. What's one thing I wish more young professionals would focus on? I think I I don't think it's a skill or like a particular role is what I wanna say. I think what I want more young professionals to focus on is that it's going to take time. You live in a world where you grew up with technology where everything was at the touch of your fingers all of the time, right? Like, I can go on to my phone and I can network, I can order food, I can order clothes, I can book a trip. So all of that stuff is instantaneous, and you can be connected with people instantaneously. So from a perspective of, like, it's going to take time, and it's time is something that at your age and that your generation happens very quickly, and sometimes things are a bit of a longer process. So I would want you to go be understanding that it's going to take time. And then the other thing I would say is that because of the pandemic and because of technology and the way that you would have grown up, and I'm going to kind of lump people between the ages of 18 and 26, and I'm probably wrong to some degree, but the majority of your communication has been behind a screen. And you have to find a way to get comfortable putting the phone down and coming out behind the screen to have real life conversations and start to work on your communication skills. And I'm not saying your communication skills are bad, but I'm saying is if I was going to say to you to focus on a particular area, it would be don't do all of your networking online. Start to step outside of your comfort zone with that. And you're going to have to work on your patience because everything you can do right now, you're doing with your phone, but the reality is that organizations aren't hiring as fast as what you're used to your phone doing for you. So you're going to have to learn patience. And I think those are two really strong skills that you can use, which will carry you through different stages of your career and be very, very beneficial. I love this.
Emily just said thank you. Her pitfall has always been
Yeah.
networking.
Emily, it's hard for people, right? We're uncomfortable doing anything that our brain is not used to doing, right? Like that's kind of your brain's job is to keep you safe. So if you're like, if you're used to doing something, and it takes 5 steps and now you're going to try to do it in 3, your brain's like, no, 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 we've got to add that other one in. That's why habits are so hard to break because whether they're good habits or bad habits, our brain is designed to keep us in our comfort zone. And so networking is really hard. It's also not something you are taught, right? Like you don't go to school and they don't teach you how to network with other people, whether they're your peers, whether they're, leaders in companies. I don't want to say superiors because I just don't think that's the right word, but you're not taught that stuff. And so it is uncomfortable and we stay in our own little bubbles. And then, post pandemic, because we lived in bubbles, it starts to become hard to get out of that. And I feel that way too. Like I am a chatty Cathy and I'm happy to talk to everybody and I love what I'm doing. But I've gone to places where I'm like, oh, I don't want to go in this room because, I don't want to, put myself out there. But I think the one thing that can make networking easier is have a question that you can ask to someone else so they are talking first, right? So like, hey, Emily, it's nice to meet you. And I'm Jen. And like, what brings you here? And then I'm asking you the question. So it's giving you the opportunity to start talking. It's allowing me to feel a bit more comfortable. And then you're probably going to either A, ask me the same thing or something different. And we've started a conversation and it doesn't make it as challenging. So I would say when networking is hard, think of 1 or 2 questions. And it can just literally be what brings you here. But you do have to push yourself to like step out and walk into the room. That is something that I've struggled with a lot of times. I'll be like, oh, I'm going to this event and this is what I'm going to do. And then I'm like, yeah, I think I'll just like stay home. And I have people in my life that will help push me to do that because I am very extroverted on one hand, but I'm very introverted and comfortable at home on another. And so sometimes I do need that little bit of push because the networking is the gold mine. Like it is so valuable and you so need it. So have a question in your back pocket and then you just unfortunately have to force yourself just one time and then it gets easier.
Lakesh Mystery
Okay.
says, for recruiter, what insights you instruct to practice every day, like a guru, mantra, any of that?
Oh, for recruiter, what insights do you instruct? So for me as a recruiter, I'm going to say this: recruiters are often painted with the same brush, but yet every recruiter does something a little bit differently. And for me as a recruiter, I obviously wanna find the best talent for the organization to put that individual into the role, but I also want it to really be the best role for that person. So for me as a recruiter, and I don't wear the recruitment hat every single day in terms of talking to candidates day in and day out like my team does, but one of the things that we have really done is say, like, make sure that the candidates are comfortable in terms of the relationship they're building with you as the recruiter, so that it allows them to identify or self-identify if it's not the right role for them. Because as a recruiter, we want to fill the position, but we want to fill the position with it being right for the company and then right for the person. And if it's not right for the person, I want them to self-identify that this doesn't feel right to me for whatever reason that is. It's pay, it's location, it's type of role, it's I don't align with the company, whatever that is. So for me, I guess in terms of not really a mantra, but a best practice for us is making sure that client and candidate experience is at the forefront of every single thing that we do. And if that means that we need to do it again because we didn't find the right person or that person identified it wasn't the right role for them, that we're okay to go back out there and start looking. And we're not going to force someone to hire someone, and we're not going to force someone to take a position that doesn't align with them. And that's really, really important to me and my team. And if that means we have to start over, then we're going to start over.
Nancy Hoyek asks, and she's a pharmacist, and she asks,
Okay.
"Hi, Jen. What
Hi.
advice do you have when it comes to finding unconventional and new avenues in my field?"
Ooh, well, I don't know what unconventional or new avenues would be in your field, Nancy, but what I would say is that when you're trying to uncover what those are, I would say probably the associations that you are involved with or events that you can go to would be one. I know someone who is a huge, huge proponent of going to conferences because usually new information or new technologies or new approaches are always kind of like teased or starting to come out inside of that, or launched entirely. So I would say it's probably going to be, putting yourself in line with industry associations and events that you can go to. And then I also think this is another area where you can leverage both LinkedIn and AI to start to, do some of that research to understand it. I think that's the beauty of both LinkedIn as well as AI, is that lots of conversations are happening and lots of ideas, lots of creativity, and lots of thought processes that we didn't think about before are then presented to us. And again, recruitment in Europe, as an example, is done very, very differently than recruitment in North America. And Europe is years and years ahead of best practices and resources and different innovative technologies and things that they're doing that will eventually come to North America. And 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I wouldn't have thought to go like, what are they doing in Europe and how could that potentially benefit me in my role? But because of technology now, we can have exposure to other markets, other industries, other best practices that we can go, maybe I can't do all of this right now, but I can start to learn from a little bit and, start to make it my own and gain that knowledge and that insight. So I would say use those to your advantage, but really lean into your association and industry, groups. There's tons of groups on LinkedIn and different things like that. I would definitely start there. The fact that you're interested in that approach, I would be something that, use your curiosity to your advantage to explore that.
I am
Transitioning?
transitioning.
I can't
Yes.
see. Look at me with my almost 50-year-old eyes squinting at the
I am transitioning to a new career. Is it more important to have Canadian experience or international experience more aligned to what I am hoping to transition to? Thanks.
Absolutely. So what I would say is that obviously your international experience is relevant because it's your experience and there's a lot of skills that you would have gained inside of that. There are a lot of employers who do want to have Canadian experience. And as you're trying to transition in, you may feel that you're not getting an opportunity to use the experience and expertise and skills you've had coming internationally, and that you either have to take a step back or do something different. But I think, every employer is going to be different in terms of what they're looking for, and everyone's going to have a different thought process on that. But what I would say is start to think about the skills, the transferable skills that you can leverage. And I don't want anyone to shy away from any experience they have, international or otherwise, right? Like, because whether you're, international coming into Canada or you were in an industry and you're going to something completely different, all of that stuff still has relevance. It's just figuring out how can you communicate the benefit of those skills and use or that experience. And that's usually going to be through the transferable skills, because I don't think that they are industry specific and I don't think that they are geographically specific either. So I hope that that helps.
Galara Shafari says, "Hey Jen, do you have any advice for when the imposter syndrome feelings creep in?"
Yeah. Well, we all have it, right, Galara? So, I mean, the reality is that no one is immune to it, and we're all going to have it at different times in our lives. So I think it is embrace it, let it sit there for a second. Don't wallow in it, right? Like, and especially if you are in the quiet and then all of the voices in your head are like very, very negative. I think what I would say is, one, know that it's normal. And then two, ask yourself, is it ultimately true? So if you're saying like, I'm not good at X, like, is that ultimately true? And if you aren't good at it, how can you get better at it? And like, be curious and ask yourself those questions, but like, I have it. I don't have it as often as I used to because I'm really trying to lean in what I know my strengths are as I'm moving something forward. But I definitely have it. And again, we didn't have the best week as a team because again, this job fair was kind of really, we had high expectations and high hope for it, and it didn't go well. So then there was moments where I was like, what did I do wrong? And you can start to spin very, very quickly. And so I let myself spin. I sat with it. I sat in the quiet in my car, cranked my music, and just kind of like let it, kind of fester. And then I thought, okay, how do I regroup with this? So I think the biggest thing is I embrace it because you know it's going to be there, and we all have it. So it's not unique to any one person. It's just part of human nature. But then I think the thing is making sure that you don't sit with it for too long. So ask yourself, is this ultimately true? If it is, how do you get better in terms of like if you don't have something and you need it, how do you go get it? But if you are like, no, that is actually like, that isn't true. I am good at X, then don't let yourself sit there too long. And again, that's where it's the hardest part, is because we will sit in it for too long, then it becomes really challenging to take action. And again, just knowing that we're all going through it, and it might not be today, and it might not be tomorrow, and it might not even be for a year from now, but we are all going to have those moments of imposter syndrome. So you're not alone when you feel that way, but you can't let yourself stay in it for too long, because then it can snowball into the opposite direction of what we want.
We're going to take a final question so we
Okay.
can wrap up because we're at 55 minutes. And that's from Emily. How do you handle clients who are unsure about their career path?
Okay, so I'm gonna just assume, and if I'm wrong, then Emily, please like kind of drop it back. But are you saying like clients that I am working with from a career strategy perspective, or are you saying that clients that you have been working with who, in project management, that might not know what direction they want something to go in? I'm going to assume that at this point you're asking it to me as a, from the career perspective with individuals that I work with, because a lot of people are unsure. I actually saw something on LinkedIn where it said, if you could, would you change your career path? Right. And like, I think it was 16% said no. And then everyone else was like, yeah, either yes, I would, or maybe. Right. So the majority of people are unsure of what their career path is. I think that does come down to the fact that we have a ton of options. Okay. So me. Okay, great. So we have a ton of options. So it makes it feel like we don't know what direction to go in. Right. And so for me, what I do is very much what I say time and time again is we take inventory. What are the skills you have? What are the experience you have? What do you want to be doing? What do you not want to be doing? What are your values? What's important to you? We can sit and say, oh, I interviewed for this company and I had to, say what their values were and what their mission statement is. But nobody really talks about what are our own personal values and then how does that correlate into our career? So we do a lot of taking inventory. I don't sit in the quiet, but I do challenge people to do that. So I don't sit with them in the quiet, but I do challenge them to do that. And then I always bring it back to, anything is possible, right? If I decided today that I wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor, could I do it? Absolutely. Is my life going to look very different for the next 15 years? 100%, but it is possible. And so I think what I want people to take from in anything that I'm doing is I want them to feel seen, heard, and valued, but I want them to know that anything is possible. And so when they are unsure, I'm asking the questions to help them build some confidence and momentum, because I just think the world in general takes that away from us sometimes. And again, we're not taught it. But again, anything is possible. And so starting to ask those questions and then sending them away to sit in the quiet, which again is the hard part, but it also can become pretty addicting. Like I said, I miss the quiet.
Laura Anthony says, thanks so much for the fuel. A lot of great information and ideas.
Thank you so much. And I would love to say that I appreciate everyone that took the time out of their Friday morning to hop on here and do this with us. It was something that was a great idea that the team had here. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. I'm always up for that. Didn't know how many people were going to come, if anyone at all. I appreciate my team for showing up and asking some questions, because I know they get those questions every day from people that they're working with. I appreciate the team at Podstarter for always having my back with whatever I want to do and however I want to do it and bringing ideas to the table. And just, to my family and friends who have just been so supportive through everything that I've been doing for the last 5 years and, kind of pushing me in directions that I didn't think I would go. This gets to be, what we do, and it's amazing and it's a ton of fun, but it is really here to help you feel seen, valued, and heard so that you can go crush the next steps of your career. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for attending. And if you, want to connect with us, go find us on LinkedIn or on Instagram or, follow the podcast or whatever we can do. And let's go crush your career.